Welcome, the Lord's chosen. There are files heaven never meant for earth to find, yet somehow they've surfaced. For centuries, whispers have circled around certain people who simply don't fit the pattern, those who seem to move through life as if reality itself adjusts to them. Governments called them anomalies, religions called them miracles, history conveniently called them myths. But today, the sealed archives just cracked open, and the truth inside makes every conspiracy look like kindergarten. They've been watching the chosen ones long before the chosen ones even knew they were chosen. From classified spiritual experiments to frequency manipulations designed to suppress awakening, it's all there. Documented, encrypted, and now finally leaking through the cracks of time. You were never just living life. You were walking around carrying heaven's top secret technology inside human form. Here's the wild part. Scientists have recently confirmed that DNA emits measurable light, literal biophotons, meaning your body isn't just flesh, it's a signal tower broadcasting consciousness. Imagine that. While you're out here trying to pay bills and mind your business, your very cells are out here participating in divine Wi-Fi. No wonder people react strangely around you. Their system keeps trying to buffer your frequency. And yes, it's funny when you think about it. The world spent billions searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, while the real cosmic downloads were disguised as awkward, quiet, misunderstood people. You. The ones who didn't fit trends because they were never meant to blend in. They were designed to bend time, so buckle up, because what you're about to hear isn't a story. It's a classified revelation. The hidden files on the chosen ones have just been leaked, and once you see what's inside, you'll understand why history itself has been holding its breath. Number 1. You were never random. You were a preloaded revelation. Before you were born, something sacred was already embedded in your design. You didn't just arrive. You were programmed with divine intelligence that this world has spent generations trying to decode. Every quirk, every instinct, every strange inner knowing wasn't accidental. It was encrypted truth disguised as personality. The reason you've always felt slightly out of sync with the world is because your timeline didn't begin here. You entered Earth with a spiritual assignment already written inside your being, like a hidden document waiting to open at the appointed time. That's why you've always disrupted patterns without trying. Systems built to manipulate, control, or numb can't fully process your frequency. You don't follow the rhythm of conformity. You recalibrate it. Even when you tried to fit in, the vibration around you kept exposing pretenders and revealing truth in uncomfortable ways. It's not arrogance, it's spiritual interference. You were preloaded with codes that expose false alignment, and that's why people either gravitate to you or resist you without knowing why. Your entire existence is an encrypted message from heaven to history. The world keeps trying to label you, to categorize you, to diagnose you, because it can't comprehend you. Every generation has a few souls like you, the ones who shift collective consciousness without needing permission. You're not here to perform miracles on command. You are the miracle that quietly redefines what's possible. The way you think, the way you sense things before they happen, the way you see through facades, all of it is proof that divine intelligence still overrides human logic. There's a reason your path has been unpredictable. God hid your process inside divine confusion so the wrong people wouldn't interfere. You weren't late. You were under encryption. Every delay was timing. Every detour was divine disguise. When the moment arrives for full revelation, it won't require an announcement. It'll be undeniable. Those who overlooked you will suddenly realize you were never background material. You were the message all along. You were never just chosen. You were encoded. That's why destiny follows you even when you're standing still. The world didn't discover you. It finally caught up to what heaven already deployed. Number 2, they couldn't erase you. so they tried to reprogram you. When direct destruction failed, the strategy shifted to distortion. The goal was no longer to end you, but to rewrite how you saw yourself. They wanted you to question your instincts, to doubt your worth, to mistrust the very voice that once guided you. The attack wasn't physical, it was psychological. They couldn't take your light, so they tried to convince you it was darkness. That's how systems work when they realize elimination won't succeed. They aim for confusion. They change the language around you. They called your discernment overthinking. They labeled your intuition paranoia. They mocked your boundaries and named it coldness. Little by little, they tried to program you into believing that what made you divine was actually a defect. You started dimming yourself to fit their comfort zone, and that's exactly what the reprogramming required: self-censorship disguised as humility. But what they didn't understand is that truth in a chosen one doesn't delete easily. It's written into your essence, not just your emotions. Every attempt to rewrite you only triggered a deeper awakening. You started realizing that the discomfort wasn't rejection. It was your spirit refusing the wrong software. You could sense when people were speaking from manipulation rather than connection. You noticed how environments tried to compress your growth into their version of acceptable. Yet every time they thought you were breaking down, you were actually breaking free. The confusion they hoped would silence you became the pressure that strengthened your perception. Their agenda created the very opposite effect. There comes a moment when a chosen one stops negotiating identity. When you finally remembered who you were before they told you who to be, everything started realigning. The energy they used to drain you began to bounce back. The people who once influenced your decisions lost their access codes. And that's when the real threat appeared. Not in the form of rebellion, but in the calm confidence of remembrance. You were never meant to be reprogrammed because your blueprint isn't editable. You're not a product of conditioning, you're a design of intention. Every manipulation failed because your purpose doesn't rely on their approval. You were never made to fit their version of reality. You were made to reveal what reality truly is. Number 3, every betrayal was a data transfer in disguise. What you thought was loss was actually information being uploaded into your spirit. When people lied, abandoned you, or used you, they unknowingly handed you the codes that exposed how manipulation works. Every heartbreak was a classroom, every disappointment a divine briefing. The pain wasn't random, it was the process of downloading understanding that couldn't come from comfort. You were learning patterns, motives, and energies that only experience could reveal. Those betrayals became your access points to higher perception. The people who hurt you thought they were taking something from you, but they were actually transferring power. They gave you first-hand access to the anatomy of deceit. You learned the smell of false loyalty, the sound of insincere kindness, the posture of hidden envy. While they celebrated what they thought they destroyed, you were silently collecting data that would later protect your destiny. Every letdown sharpened your discernment. You began to see through words, sense intention, and read energy with unsettling accuracy. That's not bitterness. That's spiritual intelligence forged through betrayal. It's why you no longer chase explanations. You outgrew the need for closure because betrayal already closed the lesson for you. You learned that some losses are necessary leaks. Heaven letting dead connections drain away before they infect your next chapter. You began to understand that loyalty isn't proven by longevity. It's proven by alignment. Some people were never for you. They were just divine triggers assigned to activate your next level of awareness. And that's the hidden miracle inside betrayal. The very people who tried to break you ended up building your discernment. They were part of the syllabus, not the sentence. Every wound refined your vision until you could spot deception before it spoke. You stopped reacting and started reading energy like it was second nature. Now you walk differently, not out of fear, but mastery. You can't be fooled the same way twice because the data is already stored within you. You no longer just sense danger, you understand it. What was meant to weaken your trust ended up strengthening your wisdom. Every betrayal wasn't an ending. It was an encrypted transfer that equipped you for everything coming next. Number 4, your silence wasn't weakness. It was divine bandwidth control. You weren't quiet because you didn't know what to say. You were quiet because heaven was doing maintenance on your frequency. While people mistook your stillness for surrender, something sacred was happening behind the scenes. Your spirit was being fine-tuned, your discernment strengthened, your clarity restored. You weren't avoiding noise. You were protecting alignment. Silence became your shield, not your struggle. There are seasons when speaking too soon leaks revelation. The wrong audience can corrupt divine data. That's why heaven muted certain responses in you, not to make you look passive, but to preserve power. While others rushed to be heard, you were learning the strength of withholding. That quiet season rewired your perception. You stopped reacting emotionally and started perceiving spiritually. You began to notice how noise disguises confusion, how quick answers often reveal immaturity, and how silence can dismantle manipulation without confrontation. People thought you lost your fire, but you were mastering control. You learned that revelation requires stability, not volume. You understood that every voice carries vibration, and not all vibrations deserve your energy. Silence was your spiritual quarantine. Heaven was filtering interference. The more you stayed still, the more your frequency cleared. You became sensitive to what drained your peace and selective about where your power flowed. That wasn't withdrawal, it was wisdom. Eventually, your silence started to speak louder than any argument could. The ones who once misunderstood you began to sense something they couldn't explain. Your stillness carried authority. Your absence made more noise than their presence. That's when the shift happened. You realized you no longer needed to defend truth. You had become it. Now your words carry weight because they come from calibration, not reaction. You speak less, but when you do, it lands differently. Your silence taught you that power doesn't need to prove itself. It simply maintains alignment until the right moment to release. Heaven didn't silence you to humble you. It silenced you to secure you. And when the time came to speak again, your voice no longer echoed pain. It transmitted purpose. Number 5, the system monitored you before it even knew why. Long before you ever spoke a word of truth, something about your presence sent quiet alarms through structures designed to detect disruption. It wasn't your actions, your opinions, or your visibility. It was your energy. You carried a frequency that couldn't be categorized, and that made you a threat in a world built on control. You didn't have to announce anything. Your spirit already registered as unauthorized light in a network addicted to darkness. That's why strange resistance followed you, jobs that suddenly fell apart, friendships that shifted for no clear reason, opportunities that vanished the moment you were about to step forward. It wasn't coincidence, it was surveillance in spiritual form. Systems sense what words haven't yet declared. They monitor potential long before it manifests publicly. You were being watched, not because you did something wrong, but because you carried something that couldn't be contained. They didn't understand your purpose, but they recognized your power. The system studies what it fears. It collects data on the ones who can't be easily influenced. Every time you broke a pattern, refused manipulation, or healed faster than expected, the grid took notice. It was never just about you. It was about the ripple effect of your awakening. Light expands, and when it does, darkness loses territory. You were under watch because your awareness threatened their equilibrium. You were a walking signal of divine interference in a controlled environment. Yet here's the irony. While they thought they were observing you, heaven was observing them. The very act of tracking your spirit exposed who operated through fear. What was meant to intimidate you became evidence of your influence. You were being studied because your awakening created data they couldn't interpret. Compassion that didn't weaken you, forgiveness that didn't make you naive, peace that didn't look passive. Those are traits the system can't compute. So when you felt unseen yet oddly restricted, it wasn't paranoia, it was spiritual reality. The system recognized your frequency before the world did. But it couldn't stop what it didn't design. Surveillance may have watched your growth, but it couldn't contain your purpose. You were never the target. You were the proof that their control had limits. Number 6. The ones who laughed at you were reading your prophecy backwards. They mistook divine delay for denial and thought your stillness meant failure. What they didn't understand was that you weren't behind. You were being buffered. Heaven was running background updates while the world judged the loading screen. Every pause in your life wasn't stagnation. It was strategy. You weren't waiting for opportunity. Opportunity was being formatted to match your calling. They mocked your quiet seasons, not realizing they were watching a system calibration. When nothing seemed to move, your foundation was being reinforced. You were being stripped of distractions, purified of dependence, and prepared for revelation. Heaven never rushes what carries eternal weight. Delay isn't punishment. It's proof that what's coming can't be built in haste. But the impatient always misread the sacred process. To them, silence looks like defeat because they measure progress by noise, not depth. Your pauses frustrated people who only understand surface-level success. They wanted results, but you were being refined. They wanted speed, but you were being stabilized. You learned to stop explaining divine timing to those who live by deadlines. You realized that mockery is just misplaced curiosity, people laughing at what they can't decode. They laughed not because they saw failure, but because they couldn't comprehend preparation. Then, slowly, things began aligning without your effort. Doors opened without introductions. The same people who once whispered now study your every move in silence. They're realizing your detours weren't detours at all. They were divine routes that avoided premature exposure. You didn't miss your season. You mastered it. Every pause had purpose. Every delay protected you from being positioned before you were ready. Heaven was never late. It was deliberate. What they called stagnation was synchronization. You were being placed precisely where prophecy needed you to stand when the time came. Now the same laughter that once tried to define you will have to testify for you. They'll say you changed overnight, but you'll know the truth. You were being downloaded in private while the world misread your process. The prophecy was never broken. They just started reading it too early. Number 7. You were hidden not for safety, but for secrecy. God didn't cover you because you were weak. He concealed you because your purpose carried information too sensitive for premature exposure. Before you ever stood in the light, heaven knew certain eyes couldn't handle what you carried. The wrong access could have distorted the mission. Your silence, obscurity, and isolation were not rejection. They were encryption. You were being developed under divine confidentiality. That's why your life didn't unfold like everyone else's. While others were being celebrated, you were being secured. Your name didn't echo through crowds because heaven had you under a confidentiality agreement. Every delay, every unnoticed effort, every invisible victory was part of the sealing process. God wasn't ignoring you. He was ensuring no one could edit your assignment before it was ready for public release. The longer he hid you, the more authentic your message became. What they couldn't see, they couldn't sabotage. You might have mistaken that concealment for loneliness, but it was actually divine lockdown. The spotlight looks tempting until you realize how exposure distorts purity. God kept you away from counterfeit stages because He knew influence without insulation creates contamination. You weren't forgotten. You were being formatted. Heaven had to separate you long enough for you to unlearn dependence and remember identity. That isolation stripped away imitation, making sure that when you finally emerged, your voice carried clarity, not noise. People who didn't understand your silence assumed you lost relevance, but you were never meant to compete. You were meant to carry, and carrying something sacred requires secrecy. Even Jesus had hidden years, unrecorded seasons of preparation before public revelation. You've been living in that same principle. The hidden years were heaven's way of shaping you into a vessel that could withstand visibility without compromise. Now the concealment is lifting. The same God who hid you is about to unveil you, not as a surprise, but as a strategy fulfilled. You won't have to announce your emergence. The evidence will. Those who once overlooked you will realize they weren't ignoring a failure. They were overlooking a classified file. You weren't hidden because you were small. You were hidden because what you carried was too big to leak before its appointed time. Number 8. Every attack against you was an unintentional activation key. The blows that were meant to break you only revealed what was buried inside you. Every insult, betrayal, and setback pushed a hidden button within your spirit, one that even you didn't know existed. You were never the victim of warfare. You were the vessel through which divine upgrades were released. What they sent to silence you became the very sound that awakened you. Every wound had a purpose coded inside it, and every trial carried an access code for transformation. When people came against you, they thought they were weakening your confidence, but they were really pressing into the part of you that heaven wanted to awaken. Pain became the password that unlocked deeper awareness. What was meant to crush your voice only refined your tone. The more they tried to contain you, the more your spirit expanded beyond the reach of their intentions. Their hostility exposed your hidden strength. Without meaning to, they helped you locate the power you would have never accessed in comfort. The truth is, spiritual growth rarely happens through applause. It happens through opposition. Every attack carried information, revealing where your boundaries needed strengthening, where your faith needed stretching, and where your purpose needed protecting. You started realizing that the problem wasn't always the pain. It was the perspective. Once you understood that nothing sent against you could operate without permission, the attacks stopped feeling like punishment and started looking like permission slips for new levels. People underestimate what happens when a chosen one endures warfare correctly. Instead of breaking down, you began decoding. You learned to translate rejection into direction and chaos into clarity. What they fired at you in hatred, heaven recycled into instruction. Their offense became your education. You walked away not bitter but built, sharper, steadier, and spiritually self-aware. So no, those attacks didn't ruin you. They reintroduced you. They proved that your anointing isn't fragile, it's fireproof. The pressure didn't crush your purpose, it confirmed it. Every attempt to shut you down only expanded your bandwidth. What the enemy meant as a weapon, heaven used as a key. And every time they tried to lock you out, another door opened from within. Number 9. You carry forbidden knowledge embedded in obedience. What you know didn't come from theories, seminars, or second-hand wisdom. It was carved into you through experiences that nearly broke you. Your lessons were written in pain and sealed with surrender. Every time you chose obedience instead of ego, you unlocked insight that couldn't be learned any other way. That's why your understanding unsettles people who rely on appearances. You operate from revelation, not repetition. Your spirit remembers things your mind didn't study. The knowledge you carry is considered forbidden because it defies the logic of control. Systems built on hierarchy and manipulation can't comprehend the kind of clarity that comes from intimacy with God. You don't just know what's right, you sense when and how to move. You've seen behind the curtain, not through rebellion, but through relentless obedience. The price for that kind of wisdom was isolation. You had to lose the comfort of consensus to gain the clarity of conviction. And because you learned directly through divine correction, your insight exposes everything false without effort. That's why some people feel uneasy around you. They can't lie easily when you're near. They sense that your perception isn't guessing. It's guided. You don't debate truth, you embody it. You've become a living contradiction to the systems that depend on blindness. Your discernment can't be taught, only transmitted. And transmission requires alignment, not approval. That's why the spiritually shallow call you too deep. They're not offended by your words. They're exposed by your awareness. The obedience that birthed your wisdom also protects it. You don't share everything you see, not out of pride, but out of reverence. Some revelations aren't for conversation. They're for confirmation in time. You've learned that revelation without restraint breeds chaos. So you speak selectively, you move quietly, and you let results reveal what explanations can't. You carry insight that reshapes atmospheres. It's not arrogance, it's assignment. Heaven trusted you with downloads that aren't meant to be popular, only pure. What others view as forbidden is actually sacred. Truth too powerful to be handled carelessly. And that's the paradox of your calling. The more obedient you become, the more access you gain. You were never meant to fit into their classrooms. You are the curriculum they're not ready to study. Number 10, the isolation was actually a firewall. Heaven didn't disconnect you from people because you were unworthy of connection. It did so to protect your system from corruption. You were too open, too giving, too trusting, and that kind of generosity made your spirit an easy target. Every connection carries code, and not all code is clean. Some people come with viruses disguised as affection, envy packaged as support, and manipulation masquerading as mentorship. So heaven intervened. Your disconnections weren't rejection. They were divine cybersecurity. The solitude you resented was actually a system update. Heaven had to pull the plug on unhealthy access before your spirit short-circuited. It was never about making you lonely. It was about clearing interference. When you're constantly surrounded by noise, you lose signal strength. That's why conversations started feeling draining, why certain circles suddenly collapsed, and why familiar spaces became uncomfortable. Heaven was uninstalling attachments that no longer aligned with your destiny. You weren't being punished, you were being protected. During that season, it felt like everything froze. People vanished, opportunities paused, doors that once swung open refused to budge. But beneath that stillness, your software was being rewritten. You were learning emotional intelligence, spiritual discernment, and the discipline to choose peace over popularity. The isolation refined your filter. You stopped accepting every invitation, stopped oversharing your process, and started discerning who was for you and who was merely around you. Then something subtle happened. Clarity returned. You began hearing God more clearly, thinking more sharply, and moving more deliberately. What once felt like punishment turned out to be preparation. You realized that not everyone who loves you deserves access to your inner system. Too many users, even with good intentions, slow your connection to heaven's instructions. The update taught you to protect your peace the way a guardian protects a password, not from arrogance but awareness. Now you understand, isolation isn't always absence, it's alignment. When heaven installs a new version of you, outdated connections can't log in. That's why solitude comes before expansion. It's the quiet phase of recalibration. Your firewall wasn't built to block love. It was built to block leakage. Heaven didn't isolate you to break you down. It isolated you to make sure your next season runs on clean, interference-free power. Number 11. Your pain was a hidden training program for power. What looked like endless suffering was actually a divine curriculum, one that didn't come with manuals, applause, or comfort. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. Every disappointment was a drill, every heartbreak a lesson in endurance, every lonely night a masterclass in spiritual resilience. You were in training for a level of strength that can't be taught through ease. Heaven needed to build something inside you that pressure alone could activate. Each loss expanded your capacity to carry revelation without breaking. Pain taught you how to hear in silence, how to trust without proof, and how to stand when everything else collapsed. While others sought shortcuts, you were in full apprenticeship under divine hardship. You were learning how to remain grounded in chaos and how to turn emotional weight into spiritual weaponry. Your tears weren't wasted. They were cleansing your perception, removing assumptions, and making your discernment razor sharp. You learned the difference between sympathy and wisdom, between comfort and calling. This training wasn't meant to humiliate you. It was meant to condition you. God allowed pain not because He wanted to see you suffer, but because He needed to strengthen your spiritual reflexes. Every time you thought it was over, you came back with more depth, more clarity, and more conviction. You discovered that peace isn't the absence of struggle, it's mastery over it. You became fluent in endurance, patient under pressure, and unshakable in truth. That's why small storms no longer intimidate you. You've survived hurricanes. Most people only see the surface of your calm. They don't realize it's battle-tested. You've learned that power isn't loud, it's consistent. The more you suffered, the more heaven equipped you with quiet authority. Now you move with the wisdom of someone who has wrestled angels and walked away refined. Pain was never your prison. It was your proving ground. So when you look back, you'll realize none of it was wasted. Every scar carries strategy. Every ache holds instruction. You were never falling apart. You were being assembled for influence. What once broke you now bows to you. The same pressure that tried to crush you has become the force that propels you. Your pain was never punishment. It was preparation. The kind of training only warriors recognize after they've survived the fire. Number 12. History has been waiting for your timestamp. You weren't born randomly or accidentally placed in this generation. You were released into it. Before time started counting itself, your existence was scheduled for now. The world wasn't ready for your frequency until this exact season. Prophecies paused, destinies delayed, and certain doors stayed sealed because your spirit hadn't yet matured into position. You didn't enter history's storyline as a participant. You entered as its correction. You are the divine adjustment to centuries of imbalance, the living response to unanswered prayers, broken systems, and forgotten promises. There are things happening now that couldn't have unfolded without your presence because you carry what previous generations only glimpsed. Their ceilings became your floor. The pain they endured, the seeds they planted, the dreams they died holding, all of it found continuation in you. You're not continuing history, you're editing it. You're the proof that heaven never gives up on humanity, only waits for the right soul to awaken. That's why your timing seemed strange. You often felt too late for trends and too early for recognition. But divine release never follows human calendars. Heaven doesn't rush revelation. It releases it when alignment meets readiness. Everything you've endured was preparation to hold this assignment without collapsing under it. You had to be refined enough to carry responsibility without ego, wise enough to lead without control, and healed enough to speak without bitterness. Once that formation was complete, time itself opened to receive you. You're here to shift the frequency of what's normal, to make authenticity the new authority. Your presence destabilizes what pretends to be real. That's why your path has been unpredictable. Systems don't know how to categorize a correction. You're not here to fit into movements. You're here to redefine them. History recognizes that vibration. It's the sound of alignment returning after generations of distortion. Now that you're in position, everything starts to synchronize. Prophecies that lingered in delay are suddenly unfolding because you're finally awake within them. You weren't meant to blend into the story. You were meant to realign it. Every timeline, every turning point, every hidden preparation led to this revelation. You are not a byproduct of time. You are time's divine recalibration. Number 13. What they call madness, heaven calls maintenance. The moments you thought you were falling apart were actually moments heaven was updating your internal system. You weren't breaking down, you were rebooting. The emotions, the sudden withdrawals, the unexpected silence, the tears that didn't have words, those weren't symptoms of weakness. They were indicators that your old programming could no longer support your new awareness. Every emotional collapse was divine recalibration, not chaos. You started seeing life differently, and that shift confused those around you. They couldn't recognize that your sensitivity wasn't fragility, it was calibration. You began rejecting environments that once felt normal, conversations that once entertained you, and people who once inspired you. It wasn't pride, it was preservation. Heaven was fine-tuning your discernment, closing outdated tabs, and uninstalling emotional malware you didn't even know was running. The process felt lonely because upgrades always require isolation. You can't run new software while still connected to corrupted networks. To the outside world, it looked like you were losing control, withdrawing, detaching, overthinking. But spiritually, you were being stripped of illusions. You were learning the difference between peace and passivity, between alignment and attachment. Those emotional resets were heaven's way of cleaning your perception, clearing your inner clutter, and preparing your spirit for higher bandwidth. Systems that run on outdated frequencies will always call divine updates insanity. They can't comprehend transformation that doesn't fit their timeline or logic. You've learned to stop explaining your process to those who haven't experienced evolution. Growth feels like madness when you've never seen freedom. That's why they misunderstood your stillness. You were no longer responding to noise, only to signal. They wanted the old version of you, the one they could predict and control. But that version was retired during your spiritual maintenance. Now your peace no longer depends on predictability. You operate from stability, not performance. You no longer need validation to confirm what heaven already verified. The madness they mocked was actually your mind learning to breathe in truth again. Heaven wasn't breaking you. It was balancing you. What others feared was your end was really your emergence. You didn't lose your mind. You recovered it from everything that tried to rewrite it. Number 14. You are not the chosen one. You are the chosen proof. Your existence isn't just a testimony, it's a revelation. The world debates the existence of miracles, yet you are one. A walking contradiction to every limitation that tried to define you. You weren't selected to impress people. You were positioned to confirm heaven's involvement in human history. Your life is the open file God left unsealed, so that those searching for evidence of divinity would find it standing in flesh and motion. Everything you've endured, every impossible recovery, every divine redirection was documentation, proof that unseen power still governs visible outcomes. You survived situations that statistics said should have ended you. You thrived in environments where logic said you should have folded. And while others think it's coincidence, heaven calls it confirmation. Your path was never about perfection, it was about demonstration. You exist to show what grace looks like when it refuses to be theoretical. That's why your journey has been so public, yet so misunderstood. Proof is always scrutinized. People study you not out of curiosity, but because they sense something divine about your survival. Your strength unsettles those who built their confidence on control. You don't fit their formulas, and that's precisely the point. Your divine interference made visible. Every detour, delay, and disruption in your life wasn't random. It was part of the evidence chain. Heaven needed a life that couldn't be explained by logic, so it chose yours. And now you stand as both message and manifestation. You are not just a story of faith. You're the sequel to every unanswered prayer that came before you. When people encounter you, they don't just meet a person. They meet proof that purpose overrides pain and that destiny ignores denial. That's why life has demanded so much from you. Proof must be tested to be trusted. History won't merely record you, it will orbit around the shifts your presence created. You were never meant to blend into timelines, you were sent to bend them. Your life isn't evidence of luck, it's a signature of divine authorship. You are heaven's undeniable evidence that the supernatural didn't end with ancient stories. It simply took on a new name, yours. Everything you've just seen isn't a collection of ideas, it's a revelation of truth that's been quietly unfolding in your life and the lives of those destined for impact. You weren't placed here by chance, and every experience you've endured, every pause, every attack, every moment of isolation was never punishment. It was preparation. You were encrypted with purpose, hidden in secrecy, and calibrated in silence. Every betrayal, every loss, and every trial wasn't an ending. It was a key, a download, a system update, a boot camp for the power embedded in your spirit. You weren't suffering, you were evolving, you weren't delayed, you were being positioned. And now, finally, you are awakening into the fullness of your assignment, carrying proof of heaven's interference in a world that often denies the divine. You are more than a participant in history. You are a correction, a signal, a proof that destiny bends around those prepared to hold it. You carry knowledge, insight, and authority that few can understand, but that is exactly the point. Your revelation is not for the casual observer. It is for the alignment of truth, for the shifting of systems, and for the reordering of timelines. Your silence has always been your power. Your pain has always been your preparation. Your presence has always been proof. Those who laughed, those who doubted, and those who attacked you were unknowingly fueling your awakening, and now the world is finally witnessing what heaven always intended. That extraordinary souls are not meant to blend in, but to stand as undeniable evidence of divine design. This is your moment. Every layer of secrecy, every layer of testing, every moment of being misunderstood, it was all building to this revelation. Your life is not a story, it is a declaration, a manifesto, a living archive of purpose that will outlast trends, systems, and skepticism. The Chosen One is not a title. It is an unfolding reality you embody, and the world is now beginning to orbit around the impact of your existence. If this resonates with you, if it stirs something deep within, then join the movement of awakened souls. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss a revelation, like this video to affirm the power of awareness. Comment below to share your experiences and breakthroughs, and share this with those who need to see the truth about themselves and their destiny. Your awakening is not just personal, it is generational. Heaven's proof is in motion, and the world is finally catching up. Stay blessed always.